Hello, and welcome to the Halifax Roundtable. My name is Joe, and sitting with me at the roundtable is Croker and Nate. How you guys doing?
Good.
Cool. We are going to spend the next hour talking about Alien RPG, the Halifax campaign, and relatable themes. We are live, so feel free to leave comments or ask questions. We will respond appropriately. So let's go ahead and get started. So I figure since the last time we talked, well, by the way, Kroger, it's nice to have you this time around.
Thank you.
We spent some time talking about our own characters and such, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about some of the other important characters we have roaming around Halifax. So specifically, I wanted to focus on Andromeda first. She's been with us since the beginning, which neither of you were there for, but Croker, you came in just a few sessions later, so you've known her pretty long. And you knew her before, obviously, Nate had come on board, so she interacted quite a bit with the previous company agent. And I think she's kind of got friendly with you too as well, right, Nate?
Yeah, we get along.
I think she kind of gravitates towards company agents, which wouldn't be a surprise because she is company owned. Right?
Sure enough, yeah, she is company property.
Yeah.
Sorry, she is her own person who happens to be owned by the company.
Right. When you first met her, Nate, she was missing an arm.
No, she had just gotten that repaired, I think, before I got there. I think that must have been the end of season 1 or the very start of season 2. She had a new arm by the time I saw her, but it was still shiny and new.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she had some hard times before you came on. But all in all, she's been pretty good. She generally likes to take care of the ship and take care of you guys, especially when you're coming in and out of sleep and when you are asleep and things like that. So, what about you, Kroger?
So like, with the drama, like what's my relationship? You think, or like, are you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you've been around her quite a long time.
She's the best way to say it. She's the one that you always wonder what she's doing when you're in hypersleep. You're like, the biggest curiosity is like, what is she doing while we're all hypersleeping away?
Yeah.
But she's that thing that like you feel better knowing she's on the ship because you don't want to like know what the ship would be like without her.
Yeah.
You know, like the trust.
I was gonna say, do you trust her?
Yeah, I trust Andromeda. There's been moments where I haven't, but I trust Andromeda.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? What do you think?
Less and less as time goes on.
Oh, really?
I think, I have a kind of a character flaw of not being a fan of droids, but
right.
I think where he wonders what she's doing when we're asleep, I wonder what she's doing when we're asleep, and we've got some things going on with our trouble with droids, and I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if she's maybe not quite as friendly as we think she is, but we'll find out, I guess. But I'm definitely looking at her through a different lens after the last few adventures.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that to an extent.
See, I trust her more and more. We have, whenever we're doing contraband, she doesn't rat me out. So,
but I think we've determined your judgment is questionable at best.
Well, Yeah,
That's another story.
that might be its own round table.
But you bring up that you don't know if she's doing what she's like sleeping and such, or while you guys are sleeping, and quite a while ago. This was before Nate's time as well. You guys acquired Dog, which we recently renamed, or Andromeda named as Grim. So the two of them have become quite the companionship, and she spends a lot of time during your hypersleep training Grim to actually you really don't kind of know what, because you never really asked her, but you just trust that she's training Grim to do something. He's been Grim's been friendly, so that's a start at least.
That might be a question worth asking. Let me take some notes here.
Yeah.
But,
this what was it? This past episode, we landed on Usuno, I believe it's called, and which is a 3-world empire colony, and Andromeda took Grim to get certified, so Grim would no longer be considered contraband and wouldn't have to be hidden anymore. So there's also the question of what's behind that motive. Any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, what do you need? I don't.
I think Cable goes looking for answers where he just he's not going to flip over rocks. Where I think some of us others are a little more suspicious that I don't. Maybe she's getting him, AKC registered or something. But seems strange when we're worried about contraband and she brings a giant dog out of the ship and parades it up the main street.
I guess I never thought of it as contraband officially, and so it doesn't bother me as much. I'm more shocked that she's willing. It's kind of like the shock of her willing to risk it, but at the same time feels very droid-like to risk it. I'm gonna have to get my charger for my headset. I'll be right back.
Yeah,
you guys keep talking.
Yep. So under normal circumstances, like having a cat or a dog or something like that on the ship isn't considered a big deal. In fact, it's kind of common. I mean, you think of Jonesy back on, in the first Alien movie.
Yeah.
So things like that aren't considered an issue. However, Grim is a wild animal. And
a large wild animal.
Yeah, a very large one, and not exactly common, a common animal to have on a ship. So you would probably guess that is Andromeda's reasoning for getting the dog certified. I use the term certified. I don't know what the real term is, but you get the idea. Licensed.
We should probably look into that while we're there. Yeah, licensed is a good. She's getting his rabies tag so he can go to the dog park. And
right.
Yeah, I'm curious what the world determines for that. If, like you said, it's pretty normal to have a cat, but she's going in there with more than a cat, and
yes,
went in on her own and her own devices, but I haven't heard any alarm bells yet, so it must be going okay.
Yeah. And speaking of Andromeda again, so anybody that knows anything about Alien, they're going to know about cornbread. Cornbread is always kind of like a staple in Alien. So, which was a kind of talked about, here, there, and the second in Aliens. But Andromeda always seems to have cornbread available for all of you when it's time to eat. And it kind of breaks that monotony of having to eat the ship goop all the time, which is kind of the standard on the ship.
So
unless you got. Go
real
ahead.
quick question. I gotta go back to the other one. Sorry, I was busy.
Mhm.
So we had to reconcile in the last moment how Grim dealt with faster than light because we all have to be in hyperspace.
Oh, yeah.
How does Alien reconcile other animals dealing with faster than light? 'Cause I don't remember that. Like,
Oh,
Didn't
Yeah.
Jonesy go in the cryopod with one of them?
Okay,
That's what I remembered was the.
I'm
I
trying to
forget
remember
whether it was Ripley or the kid, but I thought I remembered Jonesy curling up in the cryo sleep.
yes, Jonesy did crawl in there. That's a good question, though. So,
And does cats need to take hydration pills?
I don't think so.
Do they like sneak them into like a little cat treat and then like just like,
That's another good question.
there you go. It's, if
We'll
you're
leave
ever at
that-
if you're ever a future like forum panel for like alien people, just ask that question: do cats eat hydration pills?
Yeah. Leave that one to the imagination.
If dog isn't going into any kind of hypersleep, then while we're 3 weeks old, dog is like 407 at this point.
Yeah, so you weren't there for that. So
Mhm.
we would go into hypersleep with a little tiny puppy. We wake up like a half-sized puppy,
Yeah.
like half full grown, and then we wake up a full-grown dog. I am not sure the lifespan of these dogs.
Yeah,
but
that's
Grim
kinda
is
what
at
got me wondering.
least almost 2 years old at this point. Well,
Yeah.
year and a half. Year and a half.
Yeah. Grim's still a puppy.
Oh, yeah. We're over. Well, no, not a pup. Well, not officially a puppy because I actually have dates. I can tell you when Grim was born and when Grim came about. But yeah.
Yeah, because Grim was a straight up baby when you found him.
So we don't celebrate birthdays, I guess. I never thought about that.
Nobody's brought it up.
We ever noted birthdays. That might be something worth. I don't know. Have you guys had many crew members live more than a year?
No. Just being word.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Word.
And you guys are probably like in your 80s, 90s, or 100s or something. You know.
Officially, yeah.
Right. If not older.
What we should do next week is to declare that it's Ward's birthday and have a an on planet birthday party.
Surprise birthday.
I like that idea.
I like it too. We'll create that, make that happen.
So let's move on to a more controversial topic, which is Imogen. We all love Imogen. So Imogen came into the picture right at the end of season 1 and right before you joined, Nate. And Croker was there to experience that whole situation of her coming into Halifax, basically. So I'm trying to think back to your first encounter with her. You came on board the ship, and if I remember right, she just appeared before you even got an explanation, right?
For Cato?
Or Cato, yeah, Cato, right.
Yeah, I was not aware she was there. They were Ward was doing quite the job of hiding her.
Yeah.
Until I believe we kind of stumbled across each other. And then that's when they started trying to started trying to explain what was going on, and that kind of led to to Cable's minor meltdown with who knew what and who kept him in the dark. And and so it's as my character, I'm kind of caught in the spot of what do I do about it, and where do those loyalties lie? So I'm a bit more wary. I how do I treat it? I try to make. I think Imogen and I are friendly. I smuggle her contraband, but she she seems really attached to Cable, especially since she and Ward kind of drifted apart.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. And yeah, when you first came on, I think you threw everybody for a loop because you asked some pretty tough questions, and I could tell that everybody else was a little hesitant on, and they chose their words carefully in front of you. You know, being you're the company man, who knows what you're going to send back home.
Yeah, and then we found some surprises with that. So there's, I think there's more to come where that where those loyalties lie and who's saying what to the corporate overlords,
which has proven difficult lately.
That has had its own challenges.
Yeah,
I feel like he's in it with us now. He's stuck. Yeah.
You stopped calling me body bags, so that means I'm part of the team.
My theory is we're all body bags, or none of us are. Yeah, it's the concept of you're kind of stuck now. You've let be a secret long enough. If you haven't ratted us out by now, then we're I feel like we're pretty safe.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. Is at some point, if you don't reveal the secret, then you become a part of it. I think early on this season, the captain and I had a side conversation very much about that he and I had some plausible deniability at the time, but that worst comes to worst, there were other expendable crew members that knew more and knew it longer, but now we've kind of thrown all of us into that boat.
Yeah, it's Imogen's that part of Cable that's, I think, it's making him slowly snap. I don't know. Cable's starting to lose his mind, I think, more and more, and everything happens to Cable first. So I think Cable's
you are prone to.
Oh God! Another episode where it was like you threw another one at me.
I hadn't thought of that, but with Imogen, I suppose she's a constant reminder of the trauma you went through.
I don't know if that's actually the worst part. Is I think Cable's not freaked out by other people's deaths, but by his own, maybe more so. Like, so seeing other people die, like, freaked him out, like, maybe, like, made him realize his own mortality. But I think Imogen's a continuous reminder of his own mortality.
Sure.
So, like, whereas, like, he got over the captain's death and the Titanic's death pretty easily. But I don't think he got over the fact that now he's walking around with his own, like, there's no way out of, like, how this ends well for Cable kind of mindset. And so Cable starts to get strong, everything starts to settle, and then suddenly blows up and Cable just snaps again. And it's been that poor, like, Cable, I think, can't get past his own mortality.
Yeah, he kind of has those sort of struggles that seem to stick pretty hard, causing him always to spend a lot of time by himself and writing in his journal.
Writing in his journal, and he's already a loner kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's, there was some trust. I think he was closer to Ward, and then when everybody else came on board, like, and the secrets kind of happened behind him, I think that caused him to, like, become a loner again. Like, he was starting to, like, open up.
Oh yeah.
He lost that ability. Like, Ward and him had those little moments of connection, had to deal with the problem together, had to do the teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he, with the captain, everybody got on, he, and then the secrets, he went back to his loner kind of phase again. Like, I'm just going to stay in my own little space.
Let things simmer down a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And then, like, he's kind of torn, I think, between being on the ship and off the ship. Like, when he was on the ship, the dogs happened. So then he decides to stay off the ship, and they get to, and people die. And he's on the ship, and he ends up with another issue. Then he's off the ship, and he's finding, like, spiders with names written on them. He's on the ship, and things are going invisible. Let's just say It's getting a little much for Cable. He's off the ship. He just gets drunk. So probably he doesn't know where he wants to be anymore. He doesn't have I feel like he feels trapped by the chaos of it all. I think he doesn't feels like I don't know if he feels the ship's curses now as much as he feels he's cursed.
Yeah, there's no real safe space left for him.
No.
And now with Imogen being around, does that obviously presents another layer, right?
Well, yeah. So like that realization, I think, really hit him hard, and now he's kind of stuck and not wanting to be on the ship and be forced onto a ship that he doesn't want to be on. And it'll be curious to see how he handles it in the.
Yeah, I mean, let's just put this out there without giving away too many spoilers. I mean, Imogen's capabilities are quite advanced and have caused Halifax to kind of live in a bubble, and it's been hard to break out of it. And things and there continues to be more revelations about the complications of this android. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's and for Cable, I think there's like a superstitious level to it. It's like technology he has seen before, and so it's he's trying to figure out what this means to him. What is he seeing? Is this actually like technology situation, or is this like a mystical concept? Like she's actually able to do something that's non-technological, and I think that's where he's coming to terms with. He understands the technological aspect, but because it's something he's never ever been able to see. It's like the old concept: if you took a cell phone back to 1800s and you see a smartphone, they wouldn't think this is technology. They would think you're
bonkers,
magical. You're magical. Like you show them pictures and you're able to show them like
they think it's sorcery. I mean, it's,
sorcery, and I think that's Cable's kind of dealing with this idea of, is this technology or is this like a mystical ability?
Wow,
that defies reason.
That's pretty deep.
That is deep.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what he's dealing with. Like that's why like he doesn't see it as technology, and so like his way of comprehending it is different.
And he
seems to be left out a lot of the communication that people get. That when he explains stuff to him, and he's never told, and so he has to reason it out. He's all by himself, and it's happening, and it's never happened before, and it's
sure, nobody's increases that paranoia.
Yep.
So that's an interesting thought here. So to expand on that a little bit, we have not explored religion or cult or anything like that at all in Alien, at least not yet. Is Cable or Cato religious? Or let me expand on that too before you even answer that. Going by what you're saying, Cable, of how you're looking at Imogen, would you consider it a religious thing or not?
Not thinking Cable sees it as a religious aspect, but more a superstitious aspect.
Okay.
Like he sees it as witchcraft conceptually so far. Like, and even though he like understands she's an android and all that, I don't think that like is what bothers him. But I think it goes into like a superstitious kind of concept for him. Like I feel like he thinks he's cursed. And so like maybe there is a spiritual aspect to it. Well, he's always thought the ship's cursed.
Yeah.
Like everything's happened. And I think at first it was more of a joke to Cable, like, haha, ship's cursed. But I think the more it happens, it's like, wait a second, maybe I'm not making this up. This is something that's like truly can happen. And I'd say he has a lack of faith as much like he has a lack of faith, but more of like a belief in the supernatural side of it. I probably would think so.
That's pretty cool. I like that. And I gotta say, you play that off pretty good. I've picked up on that. So,
Yeah, I think he's definitely a superstitious person. Like,
yeah. What about Cato? How does Cato view Imogen without
Yeah. I think she's like a puzzle to be solved. It's I come from a religious background, but it's through the experiences I've had, it's really the almighty dollar, I think, is the only savior I have left. And whatever I need to do to get up, I came from a crappy ice planet that I got dumped on, and I've gotten here, and so now it's that loyalty thing. It's like, do I start to feel that attachment to these guys, and Cable especially. It's like the guy, I feel for the guy and all he's going through, and part of me just likes to watch the world burn too. So I've got no problem throwing a little whiskey on the fire. But her duality, I think, troubles him. That I can see Ward's side where it's, she's a sweet kid that hangs out and plays with the dog. And then there's her terribly creepy side. And it's like, and then there's the other burdens she carries. That's like, she's literally a ticking time bomb. And I think Cato feels like nobody else is considering all of the repercussions. That come with it, that we're all worried about the immediate, is what's Imogen going to do? What's the other side going to do? Is somebody going to find her? Where it's, I think my concern is coming from what happens when what she's carrying is no longer where it's safe.
Right.
And having been privy to the corporate side and heard of heard rumblings of things, it definitely makes me uneasy. But it's I think deep down there's a spiritual element, but I think on the surface it's very much a lack of belief in any system. So it's I don't typically believe anybody's there to help us. So that makes some things challenging.
Right. Cool. All right. Let's switch over now to talk a bit about combat, since we finally had a little bit of a run in. So it was a couple sessions ago that we had, going back further than that, we had a session that we got halfway through and then got into combat. So we got into combat kind of blindly. And how did that go?
Well, first off, we haven't gotten to this blindly. Just a note, Nate wasn't part of this. We technically did a battle where we fought these dogs before. And technically you still won, of course, Andromeda, because of the situation. So ironically, it's like looking back, like, man, that would have been such an easier fight if we had known then how much easier it would have been. So I'm glad we learned about it, and now feels like less of a slog.
Yeah, I didn't exactly understand how armor worked, and once I figured it out, it all made a lot more sense and made things a little bit more manageable. So, needless to say, that didn't go very well at all, and
It felt like a slog. That's where the problem with the combat was before. Like, we were all useless, so it was just a slog.
Right.
So, we'll go back to the ship, leave it, drop it out there, and the guy out there, we'll come back later. See how this goes.
Yeah.
But, I felt there was a certain level of accuracy to that. I mean, we're not Space Marines. We're freight guys. So if you tell me there's a bad guy outside, we're going to grab whatever's sitting there. I mean, Ward's going to grab the flamethrower, and somebody's going to grab a wrench, and it's going to be the Keystone Cops out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was, very indicative of that. Now it's, mechanically, I think it worked better the second time.
Yeah.
But I have to remind myself that this is not your typical Dungeons and Dragons. It's not a system set up for you to stand, plant your feet, and shoot magic fireball until the thing is dead.
Right.
We've got 3 hit points, and they have, unknown hit points and armor and jumps and bites. And so if you can't kill it, you need to run.
That's definitely the scary part, because, you guys are so squishy, and it's just, it really can only take a couple hits, and there's no real healer. There's a couple things that Ward and maybe another one or two you can do, but that's about it. And most of it's about just saving your ass long enough to get you back to the ship or something where you can, it's just enough to sustain you, I guess you could say. I mean, right. You're not going to get back up and fight again if you go down.
Well, and even then, if you get us to the ship, I mean, we've only got, we're a space freighter. We've only got rudimentary, medical. So if you survive that long, you better hope you can survive to get to the next, actual, med pod. But
you guys are ultimately actually better equipped than probably most space truckers are, because if you think back to Nostromo in the first Alien, what they have when I think they had like a cattle prod and something else, I think something like that. That's all they had. They didn't have anything. So,
well, we started out with nothing too, though. Don't forget.
You did.
We only got stuff because shit happened.
Right.
When shit happened, we're like, okay, well, no, I'm spending my salary on.
Yeah.
Well, and after the activities going on when we ended the last session, it's yet to be determined if we will still have things when we come back.
I will know. I think that's the one flaw in the game itself, is the costs of things don't make sense.
Too cheap.
Yeah. Like we were. Like, do you think
I would agree with that?
Yeah, like we make so much money.
Yeah, I would agree. One or the other is probably out of balance.
I can see the salary, because how would you pay somebody who's only like maybe we're making too much money? I don't know. Maybe that may be the case. Whatever. But I think more so is the fact that, I mean, you couldn't buy a handgun at how much it costs in real life for what it costs in the game. So, like, either that or inflation really slowed down, went backwards. And I think shipping these guns to like a space station all the way out there and having to pay us to do the space freighting of those guns, to sell those guns, it's illogical. I think that's where the game needs balancing.
That's a good point. At the same token, though, you're riding around in a very expensive ship, and there's always a chance for things to break. And I mean, y'all been, for the most part, pretty lucky. There was a couple of occasions where you had to wait a little bit to get parts and stuff like that. But those parts, the electrical and mechanical parts, are expensive. You're talking about 100.
See, that's what I'm saying. That's almost out of balance on the other side. Like, whatever it costs to fix a coffee maker was like $100,000.
Yeah,
like cost.
But right.
We could buy an entire ship's worth of armaments probably for like $5,000. That's, I think, is a little out of whack. Like, thinking the game is like how much electrical parts and mechanical parts versus what weapons cost. Like, I don't even know if the mechanical electrical parts are out of whack. They actually might be in whack.
The only argument I could possibly give towards that is, like for instance, when I worked in with hardware and stuff like that, and somebody would buy a very basic like Dell PC that you and I would buy for like, I don't know, $300 or $400. A company would pay for $3 or $4 grand for it, even though it's the same exact PC, but for whatever reason, because it's in a company setting, it's marked up
like
so much.
Paying $10,000 for a hammer.
Yeah, right.
It's the same concept.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
And you're buying. I think I get ready to see where you're going, but you're buying the weapons and stuff on your own. It's private transactions.
Yeah, but when we would try, like even when we're buying electrical and mechanical parts, they're still. Actually, I think they were more expensive. We got a deal. They were $200,000 at one point. Like, oh, I'll give it to you for $100,000 because you're working for the corporate guy. Right. If you're buying these on your own, if he works at it, I just don't. I think it's just imbalance. I think somebody didn't play the balancing of that when they created it. I don't know if they rushed it or the logic wasn't there behind the idea that like probably a handgun, if you were buying it in some faraway space station, would be like $1,000, maybe $2,000, you know?
Right. Instead of $400 or something like that.
Yeah, instead of like $400 or $350 or whatever it is that costs us, and that's the stuff that is a little out of whack. They should probably have like a range of like if you were to buy it from a manufacturer directly where they made it for this much to an out of the way colony or the guys selling because they happen to have some extras.
Yeah,
would be this much.
Well, you know, could go to that wasteland type format too, where sure we can buy a military grade handgun, but it's one that's been kicked across the planet 3 times, and it's a $3,000 handgun, but we bought it for $400, and maybe it will fire every third time you pull the trigger.
Right.
That kind of thing that, and that could easily be, I think, played into the game.
They'd have to put durability then in, and that's new mechanic that becomes that in.
Yeah, it becomes its own thing.
Go
ahead.
I actually had a conversation about this actually with a few other players online, and they just pretty much just said, it's your game, do what you want to do, but I kind of just left it at the rules, because I said, what is everybody else doing,
yeah,
because I'm kind of on board with you. I think it's a little cheap too, but at the same time, I don't want to break the system, so I just keep it how it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd say I don't disagree with you. What I'm saying is, I don't know how you spend your money in this game. I think that's what this game now will lack for people. We're probably way off topic. Now at this point, what this game would lack is like, I've got $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
What do I buy for $60,000? Like,
right?
I just buy rounds of elements.
If there's any way to look at that, is that I would assume that everybody's end goal is eventually to retire.
Well, yeah. I guess a mechanic for. We don't have cost to us, so it's an infinite amount of money. If anything, it's just locating the thing you want to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Than it is the amount of money you have on hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas in any other RPG, money suffices for the goal of the party.
Right.
Yeah, so like you're always lacking it generally until like way later on. Maybe you're not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think will be interesting to see how that plays out from a standpoint of the game. I think it's like even D&D, that's part of the game, is always acquiring wealth.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same token, a good way to roll that I have thought about this too, is a good way to role play that is if you did lose all your money somehow, whether through purchase or not, I think your character would be pretty pissed off because they're like, fuck, there goes my retirement.
That is true. There should be a way to like put money into retirement accounts over time. like a money that just doesn't like get impacted anymore. You could be like, oh,
Well,
I'm gonna put
that's
20% of
something
my
that
401k and Whalen
Yeah.
Utani.
Yeah.
we're, that came up like with the, with the hotel and stuff in this last time. Is that something maybe we should consider? Is how much of our money is actually liquid? We're paid all this big money from corporate, but it's obviously, I'm sure it's electronically transferred to somewhere, and we're out in New Earth. How much of that do we have access to? That could change that dynamic. So yeah, sure, on paper you've got 150,000 gold, but if you can only access 2,000 of that at a time, then the rest of that money is kind of nebulous.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if Cable even sees himself retiring. Like, Cable doesn't see himself living long enough to retire, so probably Cable would not put any money into a retirement fund because he has no picture of retirement. He pictures himself dead and floating in space somewhere.
That's so sad. But it makes sense.
Cable has no hope of thinking he's going to survive all this. He's just... So I think he's at some point, like, there's been moments where he's just going with the flow of, like, I'm going to die. Let's just keep going. With the inspection thing, he's like, cool, inspection. Well, I was going to go somehow.
Yeah.
Which amazes me because he's so nonchalant about that until something like, doors opening and closing, and it's like a rubber band snaps. Like, nope, that's it. I can deal with the inspection. I can deal with everything else, but that's too many things.
It's the abstract. So it's like a person who's a hypochondriac who accepts their death. Not the idea that they, okay, I'm a hypochondriac. I know I'm going to die. Whatever I have is this. Until somebody actually tells them they have this. So it's like he's got this abstract death of Imogen being his death right now, or like just something killing him. And then something actually happens. That's like got him like, oh my fucking God, I could die in this moment.
Sure, it's now.
And now he goes into like full defense, like fight or flight mode. And that's like it's the abstract of the death that, like, I think bothers him. And then it's like now with Imogen, we're trying to avoid it. We're like beating around the bushes. Like, will he see that death coming? Now it's even worse. Like, when we went to fight these dogs, he's like, oh, well, if this thing gets to me, I die. Now it's like I could die in my sleep. It's a creepier feeling.
I see that's gonna make the ultimate death of Cable like its own episode. That's gonna be super tragic at that point.
Yeah. It's
not just like it's not just a character dying. It's this whole, and then ultimately we find your journal. It's just it's kind of depressing.
Well, I think his journal is funny in the sense that it's like his musings now more so. Like, it used to be like a little more focused on the actual journey, and now it's more of his musings of like life and death and like what's to come. And it's less, I think, about specifics or even like really a depressing thing, but more of like guess we're a cursed ship, like, guess that's what it is. Like, just move along. And like, it's like his musings of like, it's like that person who, like, even though their hypochondriac doesn't think they'll ever die, their hypochondriac makes them think they're gonna die. Then when the moment of death is coming, it's like this twist and turn and like pulling motion on him.
It's complicated, but it makes sense.
It is. It's like his psyche is just thrown off.
So either when Cable ends or the campaign ends, we're gonna have to make that journal public.
Oh yeah. Well, the time will come.
Yeah. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about disease. We've kind of been getting into that just a little bit. One of the recent locations that you visited was New Earth. It's a colony. I didn't pull up all the details about it ahead of time, but kind of know the gist of it. So I originally heard about New Earth in I was reading the Alien Omnibus. I think Volume 1. And it was mentioned in there, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I looked it up and decided to throw it into our campaign and give it my own little twist, because there's not really much about it afterwards, only about what happened. So, and then I also wanted to give Carson something, because he's big into like conspiracies and, you know, not common knowledge kind of things, you know. So he knew about New Earth a little bit, but New Earth, you know, suffered. It's claimed that they suffered disease. You know, you can decide what really happened. That wiped out the entire planet, and it was condemned. And the planet and the moons and everything around it were condemned for forever time. My spin was on it that Weyland-Yutani didn't want anything to do with it anymore, so they gave it to the Steel City, that Steel City Ranch Company or whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they went in and set up a new colony, which is where you went to. So essentially, it's called New Earth 2. Croker, you were, or Cable was very hesitant to go there. I remember. So was Ward. Because it's like, okay, yeah, a planet covered in disease, you know, it's got to lay dormant somewhere, you know, right?
Yep.
But essentially, you all came out unscathed from there. So, how
we lost Kato.
We lost Kato. I'm sure he'll be back. So, yeah, so you came out of New Earth unscathed, and that's actually where we had our big battle at. But what did you think about New Earth?
I don't know if I ever really left a ship, really. I don't think I actually really... If I did, I barely did.
Did you? No, you didn't, did you? You didn't leave until the battle happened.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I avoided leaving.
Like, hey, disease and shit like that, I'm not even going to bother, so I'm just going to stay on board.
There's
That's
also
right.
a little bit like that paranoia phase.
Yeah. Yeah, so that... Nothing. Fortunately, nothing really came out of that, but the lore, nonetheless, was kind of neat, and I would have liked to explore some more, but we had to get out of there. So, especially because there was gigantic creatures.
Yes.
Coming your way and wanting to eat Halifax.
Did they actually want to eat Halifax, or they just were actually trying to eat Halifax?
They're probably not big enough, but they could have definitely crushed it, or hurt it some for sure. Yeah, because they're big. But something you are much more familiar with is alcoholism. Cable has... You've been drinking alcohol since the beginning, right?
Roughly. I think, is that stress-induced anxiety drinking habit.
Yeah.
I think he was recovering going into kind of the Halifax.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I feel like
stress reliever.
I feel like you didn't really start drinking a lot more until after oh gosh, can't think of the name of the space station.
Oh, Axion.
I should have had it pulled up.
Oh, how do you pull it up too? Axion. It's not Axion, right? It's... Why is it so Axion, but not... I feel like it's close to that. see if I can find this.
Whoops. Yeah, but I'm sure you'll find it. But I feel like it was after that event that Cable really started drinking.
Yeah, I think that was his breaking point.
Yeah, because there was some
Aeon Station.
Aeon Station. That's it. Yep. Yeah, because there was some. Well, that's where Imogen was initially found, but that was after some crazy ass events that took place.
Yeah, I think that was definitely his undoing for like being able to control it.
Yeah.
I think before that it was more of like, yeah, it's like stressful habit. He'd drink a little more than normal, but I think he like lost his control ability after that. Like I think he's using it to treat longer term issues at this point.
Right.
Like rather than where it was like, oh, we had a really rough landing. I'm just need to get a drink in me, kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Now he's like, I just need a drink.
Or want. I just need it.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until I don't know, a few sessions ago, which I actually need to do a better job on, I think, at handling it. It's just kind of hard to shuffle all the stuff going on. There is a alcoholism rule in Alien. So at some point I decided that you've been drinking hard enough to become alcoholic. Especially because, you're really only alive for such a small amount of time all the time. So you're just like drowning yourself in alcohol pretty much.
Yep.
So I introduced the alcohol rule where you had to have a drink every, I believe it's every shift, 5 to 8 hours, or else you gain stress. And you just keep gaining and gaining and gaining stress until you find ways to bring it back down.
How long does that? Did we ever figure how long that lasts or any of that stuff? Like if we were to stop, like did it? There's
no official rule, so we're just kind of
winging it.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we're just going to go by Ward's suggestions, I guess you could say. And then at some point, we'll just say, yeah, I think you're cured. If you get to that point. Because you keep getting, and I think this is another genius point about Cable, is like you get on track, and then you stumble again. And then you get on track, and then you stumble. It's like this constant roller coaster of struggling with the disease, which is, I would assume,
realistic,
pretty real, So
I think that's the only other mechanic I think that's still not perfect either, though, is alcoholism should definitely affect my piloting, but officially doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
Technically, I can pilot perfectly. It gets wits, I think, because I can no, not alcoholism. My drinking, if you drink, it affects wits, but doesn't affect my piloting ability. Like I go land a plane hammered.
That's true. Piloting is not under wits, right?
No, it's an agility. Agility is there anyone, right? So I don't know if it's called agility, but it's like the conceptual nature of agility, I think.
Right.
So it's not affected. So I drink, but it doesn't ever affect my body. So I think that's something that's slightly progressive. It's like, well, I might as well just drink forever. It doesn't affect my job.
Right. Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
Yeah, because I'm under agility. Agility is piloting. I also can shoot a gun perfectly fine.
While you're, yeah.
It should lower all your stats down, besides maybe strength. I'd argue that it would lower every stat down besides strength should be lowered by 1 if you're
right.
Depending how intoxicated you are. To a point of 0 when you go incapacitated.
Yeah, I get it. What it's trying to do is trying to say that you're not as together, I guess, and you can't speak as well. But you're right; it doesn't affect anything else that it should.
Yeah, like you drive. Like it's not like people drive cars perfectly fine drunk, or else we wouldn't have big issues in this country.
Right.
Or shoot guns. Like I just shoot perfectly straight.
Yeah.
Like
Wow,
I think there should be besides strength, I think you should lower everything else by 1.
Mm-hmm.
For like there should be like a range, like 1 to 4, let's say, and how intoxicated you are affects that, level.
Yeah.
Because even though you say like that's the same thing, like 1 beer probably shouldn't even register. But if you're at 3 shots, now you're down 1, and then at like 5, you're down 2, and then
So a little bit more of a complex system for it.
yeah, make it more realistic to the real, like what would happen if you were drinking in real life.
Yeah. Now I just recently got some of the expansion books, and I haven't read them yet. There might be more information in those. I don't know.
Well, and logically speaking, D&D has evolved years over years over years to like perfect how technically things truly work in the real world. I mean, like that's why they went away from THACO and things like that to try to get to a more realistic way things would work. And it's gotten better, and I'm sure Alien will go through its own years and years of reworks, versions, additions.
Yeah, I'm sure. And there's still more stuff coming out too. They got more content coming out, and yes, I'm sure they'll hash some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
Over time. I could always drum up some homebrew, but again,
we probably should adjust at least that when it does come time, because it wouldn't be logical to have flying planes and shooting guns while drunk.
Right.
You could just change it to like if you drink, you lose 1 of each or something, I guess. Or
yeah, you can crash Halifax.
Yeah, like I just in theory could land Halifax without even just drink and fly.
Looks like
Kato's trying to come back.
He's trying, but we're actually out of time anyway, so and I don't think he'll make it back in time because we have to kind of close it out here. So anyway,
we don't get to talk about his giant tumor. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk. Maybe we'll save that for next time.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. So, be sure to subscribe to Ties That Bind Gaming on YouTube to keep tabs on upcoming episodes. You can also find us on popular social media and podcast platforms. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thanks and good night.